At this time, I'll call us to order, and I'll ask our clerk if she'll establish a quorum of the board, please.
Commissioner Blakemore.
Present.
Commissioner Ashby.
Here.
Chairman Whitfield.
Here.
Commissioner Hunt.
Here.
Commissioner Stoll.
Present.
All right, thank you. All members are present. Board members, you do have an agenda that was published a week ago in front of you. Is there any need to modify or any changes to the agenda tonight?
No, sir.
All right, hearing none, all in favor, let's see, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stoltz.
Yes,
Commissioner Stoltz made the motion to approve the agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Hart. Any further discussion of the board of the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of approving agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Okay, we do have our minutes from our prior meeting that we held here back on June the 8th, 2023. The clerk has prepared the minutes from that meeting. Is there any changes, modifications, or questions on those minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented by the clerk?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Blakemore. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Askew. Any further discussion of the board of the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, minutes are approved as presented by the clerk. Okay, at this time, we do have two public hearings, and then the board will actually be taking action on those items later in our agenda. So our first public hearing is a request from Randall Dalton, request a partial rezone from C1 Commercial to A1 Agriculture for property located at 10161 North Highway 27, Rock Springs, Georgia, 30739, tax map and parcel 0-325026. Is there anyone that would like to come forward tonight that would like to speak in opposition of this rezone request? Any opposition? Okay, hearing none. Is there anyone that wants to speak in favor of this, or if the applicant would like to come and speak at this time as well? You don't have to, but if you'd like to speak on this, you're welcome to come forward. All good? Okay, anyone else for or against this one that'd like to speak? Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward to our next one. Next one is the James Lyons request 7 variances for more than 6 on one private drive for property located at 0 Gilly Lane, Chickamauga, Georgia, 30707, tax map and parcel number 0-041-025. Is there anyone that wants to speak in opposition of this variance request? Opposition. Okay, hearing no one, would the applicant like to come and speak at this time? Yes, sir. Come up. Yeah, come up to the podium so we can capture you on video and get you, we can hear you well. If you would please state your name for the record, please, for a minute.
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ben Bradford. I'm an attorney here in Lafayette, Georgia. I represent the seller of this property, the owner, the proposed seller. I think I know most of you. I grew up in Lafayette, graduated from Lafayette High School. I've got a law practice. I almost walked over here from it. It's right there, but the rain scared me. I drove and then parked and walked in the rain. So I don't know if I saved myself. You guys, I appreciate the time. I'm going to try to be brief, but I've got a lot to cover. I sat in your shoes, very similar shoes, not that long ago when I was on the City Council of Lafayette, so I understand the difficulty that you have in entertaining requests. I get that. If any of you remember me from my time on the City Council, I hope you won't hold it against my client. What I've got for you here is I've prepared a packet. If it'd be okay, I would like to present that to you, if I may. Thanks. That one. I prepared one for the county attorney. Would you? So I'm sure you would like to follow along. Thank you, sir. So what I want to direct your attention to on this first page is the parcel of land we're talking about, to orient yourself where we are off Marble Top Road and Highway 193 there. It's a large tract of land. All right, you've got, the tax map says 63 acres, and it's zoned R2. All right, so you have what the county has is a very large tract of land that is zoned for residential use. I want to point out that your R2, your code does not allow any type of agricultural, general agricultural activity in a R2 zone, which means that this tract, this 63-acre tract out in the county, is not suitable for general agricultural use. That's prohibited. So it is a residential tract, not R1, but R2. What we have here is a investor that's wanting to purchase this tract, and he's wanting to build cabins on this tract. And this is as we go through this packet, I want you to keep in mind that you'll see, hopefully, that this proposal is for a multi-million-dollar investment in the county. This is not a small endeavor that is being proposed. And I think, hopefully, that you will see by the time I'm finished that this is the appropriate use for this property in Walker County. All right, so I also want to point out that the problem that we're told, the problem that we're told is that this would, well, what we're proposing would be allowed, but for one thing, which is that this tract constitutes too great a use on a private road. So I want you to notice that Gilly Lane is marked on the tax map there, and it is a public road. Gilly Lane, I believe, is a public road, but it just doesn't go far enough. So it continues out into that residential area there. You can see on the tax map that I provided on page 1 of the packet. It's a Walker County road for about half the length. And then the county stops claiming it. The road continues, but the county stops claiming it as a public road. So that's kind of your first wrinkle, is that we don't, when you turn off onto Gilly Lane, you are turning onto a Walker County road. It just continues past what the county calls it a public road, and there's some houses out there, but there's also something really important I want to direct your attention to. On Gilly Lane on the left is the High Point Golf Course. So to say, I think part of our problem with these private ways is you say, well, what about the use? This road has been used by a public commercial golf course for years and years and years. When these properties were tracked up there, there was a golf course in use using this road. All right, so it's very, very important to me that we're not dealing with some little bitty tiny road that we're trying to build a lot on. This is a road that has seen use. And in order to get to that golf course property, you have to drive past where the county's claiming and just keep going down Gilly Lane, down the private part to get to that golf course. So I'll breeze through some of these. Page 2, I've numbered the pages on the bottom right-hand corner so that we can make reference. Page 2 is where this is platted. This is a plat that's recorded in the land records. I included this for a couple reasons. One is I want to point out that we're not proposing a subdivision. A subdivision is when a tract is divided and marked into different parcels. That is not what's happening. This land was tracked out and parceled out and approved by the county in 2019. And when it was approved by the county, I've highlighted something, and it's hard to read, but you can see I highlighted. If you're like me, you may need reading glasses and a magnifying glass. But that says 50-foot easement. That's what that says. And that is on the recorded plat. It's a 50-foot easement for ingress and egress. Page 3 and 4 is the deed to the property, and the only reason I included that is because there was some question at the planning and zoning meeting about whether this property had access. I showed you the plat. It has a 50-foot access easement. On page 4, which is page 2 of the deed, it says subject to all matters, statements, notes, stipulations, and restrictions as shown on the plat. So that easement is incorporated into the deed and it runs with the land. So the only included the plat and the deed simply to talk about and show you that there's no easement problems with this property. It has a 50-foot access easement. Now, page 5 shows the proposed location of the cabins. You may have to flip to the front and then to page 5 to kind of orient yourself. What's really important about these cabin locations is that they are not just clumped together. They're scattered out. And I'm told that this is because the purpose of this is to build cabins that allow the renter, I guess I should say, when I say renters, what I mean, these are short-term vacation use cabins, to enjoy the natural beauty of Walker County. This is not a development that is going to destroy or deter from the natural beauty of this 60-acre tract. The cabins will be spread out. On page 6, I asked the buyer, who could not be here tonight, he had a family emergency. The proposed purchaser of this property is a man by the name of Mr. Craig Brown, and he owns one company called Mammoth Endurance. I've looked them up. It's a legitimate, very large company, and it's focused on recreational outdoor activities. And if you'll look, and when I ask him for an example of what he's wanting to build, he's wanting to build pretty substantial structures. These are very nice. He estimates that the value of each cabin could be between $200,000 and $300,000 when completed. So if you want to do the math on 8 cabins, this is a big investment. This is not a fly-by-night company that's wanting to come in and just try something and see how it works. And once again, this investment focuses on highlighting the outdoor, recreational, and this natural beauty of Walker County. It's very, very important to me because this is not a trailer park or an RV park. This is something very, very different. On page 7, I was looking at, this is from your packet. So you already had, this is the second time you've got this. This is part of the packet that was prepared tonight. I know it was already provided to you, but this is part of your joint comprehensive plan, and I wanted to go through a couple things. It says, here are some suggested development strategies. Now, this is what the county has published as their development strategies. I want to point out, of course, you already know this. I'm telling you things you already know, but your development strategy is to permit and allow variances for conservation subdivisions designed to incorporate large amount of open space. I believe that that is exactly what is being proposed. So we're asking for variance to, I don't know what a conservation subdivision is. I would propose to you that this is absolutely not a subdivision, because a subdivision requires property to be divided. You have a large tract of land, you cut it into smaller tracts, and then you sell it off. It's a division, okay? So what is being proposed is not a subdivision. It can't be, because a subdivision is a division. This is going to stay one large tract of land. It's just going to have multiple structures on it. So I don't know what a conservation subdivision is. This is not a subdivision, but it's similar to one in that it's going to have multiple buildings, but it is designed to incorporate large amounts of open space. There'll be limited commercial activity. This is a short-term vacation rental project. We're not putting in a store or an industrial park. And what this will do by spacing the cabins out is it's going to do what number 3 says, preserve rural features and limit residential development. So I believe that this variance is in line with exactly what Walker County wants to do. I've been so excited by the marketing that this county has done in the past few years. What the county has decided to do is embrace the natural beauty of Walker County. I love the Walker Rocks logo. I like that what we're doing is we're promoting, I believe as a county, you're promoting not large-scale commercial residential development, not saying you're against that, but the issues that you face is that Walker County is growing. And your job, I believe, is to oversee that growth and say, how can we grow and move into the future? Because we know we're going to grow. And how do we move into the future without losing our culture and our character that is Walker County? And I love how you're promoting, you're promoting the Walker Rocks and the outdoors and the hiking and the biking and the trails. And I believe that this project goes right in line with your vision for the county. We could be coming here and we could be saying, listen, we got a 60-acre tract of land that you guys have zoned R2. This is a residential. And I think that we could make an argument that this needs to be allowed to be subdivided into 3-acre tracts. And we put a whole bunch of homes on there and go through that process. And I think that if it was done the right way, you'd have to allow it. And that's unfortunately not really what I want to see, is a whole bunch of those things going into Walker County. What this would do is this would limit this tract in a major way, because you're looking at a major development that incorporates all 63 acres, and it's done in a way that can't be subdivided, meaning it stays one tract. They're locked in with this development. There was some question at the codes zoning meeting a couple weeks ago about, well, what if, I know y'all are saying it's going to stay one track now, but what if you come back and you want to, you build these things and then you want to subdivide it? Well, that's not what's being asked, and I would expect you to deny that, because it's very clearly not allowed to have that many parcels on this road. But that question is not before you, this whole idea of what if in the future. Luckily, that's not the state that we live in, where we try to foresee what somebody could possibly ask for. The key here is they are not asking for a subdivision. This will all stay one tax parcel. And that's very, very important, because I would like to look at pages 8 and 9, and I know I've gone on. If you'll permit me to drone on just another minute, this is very, very important. Very important. Because if 8 and 9, I've printed off some of your own code from the Municode website, the place where you publish your codes and ordinances. And I will tell you that it is my belief that a variance is not required to do what they're wanting to do. And now that seems really silly. You say, why are you asking for a variance if you don't believe one's required? Because this is the easiest way to get your permission. We went down to planning and zoning, told them what we wanted to do, and they said, you can't do that without a variance. I disagree, but my job's not to argue with your good employees, all right? We determined that the easiest thing would be to simply ask for a variance, but then come here and point out that I don't think one's needed. Now, the alternative, if we don't really need a variance, is to seek some sort of judicial remedy to try to figure out why a permit's not being issued if a variance isn't needed. And that's not what anybody wants to do. What we want to do is just go through the process here. But let me tell you why I don't think a variance is needed, but if one's needed, it should be granted. We're being denied the ability to build these cabins based on Chapter 22 of your code, and Chapter 22, Article 6 specifically, and that is entitled subdivisions. So already we're off to a bad start, because this is not, as a matter of law, a subdivision. But that's the code that's being used to deny the building of these cabins, is a code that's under the subdivision. Before I get to it, I want to look at the purpose of this code. I've highlighted a few things. The purpose of your subdivision code is to provide for adequate light, air, and privacy. That's exactly what these cabins would do with this property. They're not being built one on top of the other. To protect the character and social and economic stability of the parts of Walker County, that's perfect. This is right along with that. These cabins on this acreage is the absolute best use for this wooded area. It will protect the character of the entire area. and also add to the social and economic stability of the area. If you look at number 6, under the purposes, it's to preserve natural beauty and topography. And that's exactly what's being proposed that we do. And then number 7 is to ensure the wise development of the county in harmony with a comprehensive plan. Well, I've already read to you what your comprehensive plan says. And this is absolutely in harmony with that. Now, if you look at page 9, I want you to, this is the code section that is prohibiting, allegedly prohibiting these cabins. Section 22-401. So we're still in the subdivisions section. And what it says under article is that no building permit shall be issued, which does not. If you look at 3, there's 1, 2, 3, and 3 is the one that's important. It says it has a but on a private drive or a permanent recorded easement or right-of-way, which serves no more than 6 separate residential dwellings, lots, or tracts. So here's the thing. This tax parcel is number 6. So I'm being told by the zoning department that you could absolutely build 1 residence there without a variance. It's the fact that they want to build the cabins that makes it need a variance. All right? So it's not that there's already 6. There's 5. We would be number 6. All right? So we can build 1. I'm being told we can build 1 without permission, other than going through the standard permit process. But the variance is needed because we want to build more than 1. And I think the problem and the reason we don't need a variance is because this is going to stay, it's not a subdivision, it's going to stay 1 tax parcel, 1 parcel. And your code says 6 separate residential dwellings, lots, or tracts. This maintains the same number of lots and tracts. I don't know the difference between a lot and a tract. I pretty much only do real estate law, and I don't know the difference between a lot and a tract. It's the same thing, okay? When you look at the requirements, it says, provided the following criteria are met, and I've highlighted the important sentence. A maximum of 6 parcels may access the private drive, easement, or right-of-way. We are parcel 6. This is zoned R2. The hang-up comes from the fact that in number 3, it says 6 separate residential dwellings, lots, or tracts. But then it goes on to say 6 parcels. A maximum of 6 parcels. That's it. That's all it said. Now, I'll tell you that I think the idea here is we don't want to have too many on 1 private drive, and I get that. You don't want to have too many. Too many what? Well, the county gets to decide what. What the county has said is parcels. We are not increasing the number of parcels, and unless there is a proposed subdivision at some point, which I would expect this board to not allow, there would never be more than 6 parcels on this private road. Now, just in case you're hung up on the fact that it says 6 separate residential dwellings, I looked through your code for definitions because I thought, well, what is a residential dwelling? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think that these cabins are residential dwellings. And there is no definition of residential dwelling in your code. But there is a definition of residence. And the county, Walker County, defines residence, and it's there at the bottom, page 9, as a place adopted by a person as his place of habitation into which, whenever he is absent, he has the intention of returning. That's the legal definition of residence. That's the way we determine if somebody resides in Tennessee or Georgia. When we're doing a civil procedure, we say, where do you reside? That's your house. It's where you live, and when you're absent, you intend to return there. That does not incorporate a short-term vacation rental. Now you do, your code does define dwelling. It's in the zoning, it's in Article 4. It's not in the same article as subdivisions, but dwelling is a building designed, arranged, or used for permanent living quarters. That's not a short-term rental. That's a permanent living quarters. That's somebody's, where somebody is going to live permanently. But I don't believe that Definition of dwelling is what's used in section 22-401 because it doesn't say dwelling, it says a residential dwelling. A residential dwelling. That is not what's being proposed on this property. And I think that the reason that I'm right can be borne out by this analogy. I want you to think about this. This is R2. So you can have multifamily housing in an R2. So we're being told we can't build more than one structure and that these cabins are residential dwellings. Number one, I say that's irrelevant because we're only having 6 parcels. But even if it were relevant, here's the thing. You're telling me that my client could build a quadruplex on this property and have 4, it's just one residential dwelling under the International Building Code, one dwelling. So they could build a quadruplex on this property and would not need a variance and put 4 families in there that are going to permanently live there and tear up and down the road. But they can't build 4 separate structures? Is it the magic that they have to share the same roof? What if they're built 10 feet apart and we connect the roof with a piece of string? I mean, it gets kind of silly. And the reason it gets silly is because your code's not written for that. It's written to keep the tax parcels down. And that's what we're doing. It's going to be one owner. Now, why would y'all care about tax parcels? Because owners maintain roads. And the more owners, the more problems you have with people maintaining the roads. So I believe by reading this and by seeing that the county's focused on parcels, you're worried about road maintenance. Number one, this is multi-million-dollar development. Very nice cabins. The builder is going to want to keep this access clean and maintained. It's in his economic best interest. You can't maintain your online 5-star rating by having a crummy access. So number one, I anticipate the rules of economics and capitalism are going to mean that this developer is probably going to be the one that just keeps that road maintained. But number two, we're not putting 8 different owners out there and dividing the bill for maintenance among 8 people. That's why I believe that the county is concerned with parcels and not number of structures. One owner means one person you go to if there's a problem, not 8 separate ones. So, you know, I'm an attorney. I love legal arguments, and I couldn't resist, showing you the law and talking about the law. But the bottom line is that we don't care. If you'll grant the variance, that would be great, even though I'm telling you I don't really believe you need to. Or if you guys will make a finding and put it in the minutes of the record that you don't need to grant a variance because this is permitted, that would be okay too. But the bottom line is that what's being proposed goes right along with what y'all want. And if we don't do this, somebody's going to do something. Somebody's going to do something with this 60 acres. We have a chance to seize on something that's good for everybody. And it goes right along with what you're trying to promote, which is the recreational and intrinsic aesthetic beauty of the county. And I hope that this board will seize on that opportunity to get that use out of this property rather than have some developer come in the future and try to buy enough road access to put 60 houses in this place. Because we're one lot purchase away from being able to do that. And I don't think that's what Walker County wants. So I would humbly request you to consider the grant of a variance or tell us we don't need one. But I appreciate your time. You guys have really paid attention, and whether you agree or disagree, that's very important to be able to come in here and talk to people. And you guys looked me in the eye and read along with me, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very, very much.
Any board members have any questions, Mr. Bradford?
I would like to just refer to a couple of quick things. You're right, Mr. Ben. By ordinance in the R2, they could build a quadplex, one quadplex on that 63 acres by ordinance as it is. I don't think that there's anything, the plan is a great concept, very, very good concept. on on the subdivision page that you'd given us on the chapter 22, article 6 subdivisions, where you had highlighted some, I just kind of highlighted the ones in between, and one of which is, to protect and provide for public health, safety, and morals and general welfare of the county. Well, safety is one of our major concerns, and you understand that?
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Should be.
okay. And then we talk about, then we go on down to another one of those articles, talking about transportation, water, sewage, and those things. So here again, we've got 3 or 4 topics that fall under concern that fall in line with your argument.
Sure, yes, sir.
And finally, like I said, I just would make the comment, and this is just a comment, my feelings on it. Like I said, I think it is a good-looking proposal. I think that, but when we start talking about putting those amount of cabins and spreading them out on this 63 acres, and then we've got to have pathways, roadways, even driveways to get to them and all such as that. So we're talking about disturbing more than an acre at a time. So we're talking about erosion control plan. So I think there's just a little more information that needs to be given before we just are asked to give a blanket variance for, I don't think it's anybody's against the project, but when I start looking at number 1, safety, public safety, and that's not only for the people in the existing neighborhood, but for the people who are coming in from parts unknown, renting these facilities, which here again, not against it, we're promoting and we want it, but I also want them to know their means of ingress and egress and all of that. And when you start looking at a 10-foot wide access and then going on back, excuse me, thousands of feet, into the mileage, I think those are just things that need to be looked at on the front end that would better help your argument and to move your project forward. And that would just be comments that I would have off of what you've brought forward to us tonight. Those are the main things that I kind of captured out of it.
Could I respond
Sure,
briefly?
sure.
So I think you bring up great points. Number 1, I think safety is important. I think that what you mean by safety is traveling this road. I want to point out that this is the road that the golf course is on.
Ingress and egress for emergency services, that type of safety as well. Somebody from out that's rented from who knows where comes here, they're in their God's country. They're at their refuge. They're there to have a good weekend. We want to make sure, so there's more, safety encompasses the whole 9 yards, not just the road, but the whole safety concept. So I just want to be clear on that.
Sure, absolutely. But so number 1, this is the road that the golf course is on.
Right.
The golf course is on the road.
Yeah, but the guy staying in cabin number 8, or cabin number 6 is not on the road the golf course is on. He's on a half-mile,
That's what I was
road
sure.
back
Yeah,
in the woods.
so
You're exactly right.
here's what I would say about that. If we are here, the only reason we're being stopped is because it's a shared drive. If this had road frontage, we wouldn't be standing here. You wouldn't have the opportunity to ask about the guy on cabin 9. Because that's it's a private road that touches the main highway. It's on private property owned by one person. So please don't, I feel like it's a little bit of a red herring because if this property had road frontage, we wouldn't have to even ask.
If the property had road frontage, you could build 6 on it, right, Mark?
That's right.
So this, and here, we got these.
Well, I would say you could build 8 because I don't think they're residences.
On
They're
this
not.
road here, do we have any measurements of how big this loop of this road is going to be?
No, but you can get on the tax map and click around. I mean, it's pretty much around. It looks to me like it's around the vicinity of the.
Right,
parcel.
so, just me looking, glancing at it, maybe a mile loop, possibly, out of
Yeah,
63 acres?
that's
Would be
kind of,
reasonable?
yeah. And
So the existing road there that's now, and it's been a long time since I've been to the golf course, doesn't it dead end a few hundred yards or so into?
John, would you speak to that, please, sir?
Yes, sir.
I think you did some research on that.
Yeah, so that Gilly Lane there, it runs roughly 965 feet before it dead ends and turns into a private drive.
Right.
Then that private drive runs an additional 430 feet.
To the-
And that's where the parking lot was That was a parking lot previously.
So that's what I was
For the
trying to
golf
understand, so
course.
about 1,500 feet or so to the course.
Then
and
an additional
we're talking
400
about-
feet onto that property, because the property the gentleman owns, he's gonna have to allow an easement in that deed to allow.
Does not have
them-
to allow it. It
Well,
is done, it is
Well,
there.
Well, it's additional 400 feet to get to that property off of where that parking lot is now. So, and that was one of the concerns, or I think one of the reasons why it was turned down originally, because there's some dead ends on that proposal for cabin number 6, cabin number 8. There's really nothing distinguishing life safety. If a fire truck has to come in there, where can he turn around at? What can they do, first responder? You know, I reached out to our fire marshal as far as just the road width. I think 10 feet was proposed. So even if there was a private drive of 6 dwelling units on a private drive, they still have to build that drive to allow emergency response to get into that drive to reach the residence.
See, the problem is, guys, you define a private drive as a road. If I put a road on my property from my house to my barn, that is not a private drive. The state of Georgia says a private way is when 2 or more properties are sharing this. Roadways run with the land. That's a term of art. It means it goes with the land. The reason that this would be absolutely permissible and that we could build 8, because it's one tax parcel. So if this had road frontage, we wouldn't be here, because it's not 8 residential dwellings. It doesn't matter if you define them as residential dwellings. They're not using a shared driveway, because it's not a shared private way, because it doesn't access multiple owners.
One thing we gotta think about is, and you're a lawyer, obviously, you told us, but if cabin number 5 catches on fire and somebody burns up in it, because we can't get a fire truck up there, how many lawyers are gonna line up to sue the county?
0.
I disagree.
It's called, I think this county enjoys a lot of sovereign immunity that you're not afraid to assert. I mean, this is with good cause. I mean, the bottom line is that this is only an issue about the parcel on the private way.
It's about life safety.
It's about life safety, and it's also about, if you really want to break it down, the ordinance is you can have one dwelling per parcel. Is that correct, John?
Yes.
So really what they should have asked for was variances for more dwellings on one parcel, not more parcels on a private drive.
So when we apply for a building permit, all we can do is when the permitting office declines us, we can only, I mean, we can't ask for variances we're not told that we need.
No.
I mean, you understand? I mean, we can only
Yeah,
address.
I'm just, in my mind, I'm just trying to wrap my hand, and I'm just thinking that, like you said, you pointed out that it's zoned R2, which is really probably not the proper zoning for a parcel that size in that area. I'll make that go on record to say that, but if it, in fact, and I don't have any doubt that it is R2, and you pointed out the fact that if they wanted to go pull a permit and build it, well, that's if they can get environmental help, there's all these other steps that we have to go through. And so I think here again, it's not that anybody, I don't think the planning commission's intent was to not allow the project. As a matter of fact, I've heard good rapport, that it looks like a good project, and from what I see, I could get in behind the project, but not with, I can't see just giving a blanket variance without even knowing how many miles of road out there to be able to turn emergency service. See, my thing's big, all right? I'm big on when you issue a permit, you're giving somebody permission to start work. Well, I'm big on making sure that there's adequate ingress, egress, and for safety, if that first guy out there that's on a backhoe by himself clearing gets himself in a bind, I want to make sure that we can get emergency services to him at that time, not later down the road as it moves forward. So, just to say that there are steps that I think that probably should have been taken on the front end before they asked for the variance. If they had more information and presented it, it's not, and actually, it's not a trailer park, but it would fall under something. It's not a subdivision. You're exactly right, because you're not dividing the parcels, but you're asking for 8 parcels on one piece of property, and we turned down that all. You're asking for 8 structures on one parcel, and our ordinance says you can have one on one parcel.
You can have one what?
Structure.
So I can't build a barn?
No, habitable structure. Let me back.
Can you point to me in the code where it says that we can't have more than one habitable structure? Because that's not, I couldn't find that. It
In
says
Unicode?
residential dwelling.
In Unicode, I couldn't point it to you. I've got to get into that now. We can sit down and look at the International Residential Code, which does have a lot of things that have to do with whether, it doesn't matter whether you're staying in it one night or whether you're gonna live in it. There are things that have to be, minimum standards for human habitation or to even, to occupy that structure.
Sure.
Okay, so that's in the residential building code. And those are things here again, that we would just kind of want to see a little bit more about what the plan is, I think, but.
Sure, absolutely.
That's
And
just my
I think you're making really, really good points, and I think that this board should be concerned with health and safety and well-being and emergency services. These are all really, really good points. I just don't want us to get derailed, because the fact of the matter is that even though that's a valid concern, this is not something that you would be concerned with at all, because you wouldn't have the ability to be concerned with it if it abutted the road.
But that's not our fault.
Yeah,
That's
but-
not our fault that it doesn't abut the road, but we have to have that concern.
So you're not
if it does.
concerned about but see, the thing is, it's strange for the board to have no say over the health and safety of how long the road is if it abuts the road. But because this one happens to be some 500 feet or more off the public road, now we're getting into issues that normally the county wouldn't be concerned with. That's all. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think what you're saying is, if I bought 500 acres on the side of the mountain and built a house there, the county's not gonna come inspect my driveway. Is that what you're getting at?
That's right.
That's right. That's right. I would agree.
So let me ask this, I mean, this information that was provided, you know, this is one of the examples of one of the structures. So I know you talked in here and said that these are not residential, but yet in the narrative that we've been given, it states in here, let's see if I get back on the right page here.
I don't know what you're looking at.
It states that the luxury style cabins,
Oh, I think they're residential. I think they have a residential character. But that is not what your code says. It says residential dwelling.
okay,
That's the difference.
so,
So you live in, people come, they stay in a cabin. They're gonna come, they're gonna stay overnight.
to me.
So I'm not trying to pull the wool over your eyes.
No. To me, that doesn't look like a cabin, to me. That looks like a house.
You said $200,000 to $300,000? And they're only 1,000 square feet, so you're talking about $300 a square foot.
There's
custom
500, it says
home.
500 to 1,100 square feet. So, and I'm not trying to split hairs, but your presentation was trying to split hairs, so I'm just trying to back into that. So,
Sure.
if they're not residential structures, but it talks about in here there being cabins, and then it also states in here, in part of the narrative, it says that each cabin will have a designated home number, i.e. cabin 1, 2, or 3, and those house numbers will be illuminated on the cabin to be easily identified for guests, delivery drivers, and emergency services. So they're not residential structures, but now we're calling them homes, we're calling them a house, which I think they're a house. They're
Sure.
referred in here as cabins, which I agree to. So if they're not a residential structure and they're not a house, and it's for a business, then to me, are they, and they're short-term rentals, are they commercial properties?
I don't know, what does your code call them? I mean,
Well, I think, that's a good point.
That's just asking that question.
Well, that's a good point. I'd like to see how that shakes out too.
Because this is being generated as a business. So we're taking an R2 and we're generating a business here, which someone could do that with quadplex.
quadplex is a
Same
business.
thing.
And you can have
But-
two, on a lot of more than, I
But
think
then
it's
that's
10
a
acres, you got two
residential, but then
quadplexes.
that's a residential structure
put two
too.
there.
So to me, I think that it's also got to be determined, are they residential structures or not residential structures?
Sure.
Because, and also too, to be a residential structure, that's R2 zoning is for residential structures.
Sure. So if I could just briefly address that, here's the thing. I think they are structures, and I think they're residential if we're just talking on the street. They're residential character, they have a residential characteristic to them. They're definitely not a business, And if you were to say, these are residential structures, I would say, okay, I agree with you. That's not what your code says. Your code says residential dwellings, lots, or tracts. And see, the government that makes laws, the laws are strictly construed against the government, meaning we have to do exactly what y'all say, but no more. That's the unfortunate thing about being the governing body. And so this board chose to say residential dwellings, so it doesn't really matter if we call them residential structures or cabins or houses.
So
The question is it a residential dwelling? And that term is defined, residence is defined in your code, and so is dwelling. And this doesn't meet either one of those definitions. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think they are residential structures. They're structures that look like that they're built for residential use, and one family is gonna stay in them and sleep. That sounds residential to me.
And also,
But I don't get to, I'm not going off of just me and you talking. I'm going off of what your code says.
and then two, if we're taking this existing road that you say, you know, it's a public road, which I guess we could verify if it is, it's a road anyway.
He said it's a road, right?
Okay, so it goes back 900 and something feet is a road. So you're going to extend that road, basically, right? So when you look at this here too, it says, no additional private drive easements or right-of-ways must be created from the original private drive easements or the right-of-ways of any parcel that has access to. Each private drive easement or right-of-way must satisfy the county, number one, fire department dead-end requirements, number two, setback requirements, and number three, stormwater and soil erosion. So is it the intention to comply with that as far as the accessibility for the fire apparatus and the radiuses on these dead ends? Because I know they're talking about a one-way loop on these, but when you look at the map that's been provided, let me get the color map up here. As Mr. Hart was stating, you've got cabin 1, cabin 2, cabin 8, and cabin 6. They're going to end up on a dead end like a cul-de-sac. And so when we bring in a large fire truck in this area, are there going to be those radiuses that's required in our code to accommodate that?
Right, and so I think that this board can address that with the granting of the variance, because you can grant a specific variance. You can say, we will allow it so long as it's going to meet fire department, dead end, road requirements, the setback requirements, stormwater and soil erosion plan requirements, and frankly, maybe y'all could even add some more if you wanted to. I mean, that's the deal. I think it would be a nightmare scenario if this board were constantly faced with, okay, and you just basically say, we'll allow it, and then they go out and do whatever they want. I mean, I would expect if you grant this variance, which I hope that you will, that you'll put some language in there that's gonna dictate exactly what you're going to allow. And I think that you could put language in the variance that satisfies the very good concerns that Commissioner Askew has about safety and the ability to turn around and the ability to access all the cabins. And in fact, if you wanted to grant a variance that said subject to the fire department or the fire commissioner's approval of all roads, then we would have no problem with that being in the variance. And then that would give you guys the ability to continue to oversee the project as far as making sure it was done correctly.
Well, keeping in that spirit of thought there, the proposal also too talks about a 10-foot wide gravel drive. So to meet those requirements, we're talking about in here also, this is a private drive easement or right-of-way utilizing for access must be a 50-foot wide width as well. So really it needs to be designed for two-way traffic.
Sure. So I would point out a couple of things there. One, there's not a single road in the county that's 50 feet wide. That's because an easement is not a road, right? So the easements are 50 feet wide, but the roadway
That's for the
is usually.
utilities and the water,
That's exactly
water
right.
and power,
That's right.
and gas
Exactly.
utilities.
And that is why I highlighted, that point is why I highlighted on the plat that we have a 50-foot access easement. Now,
But are you going to continue that?
well, here's the problem. It can't be continued because you can't have an easement on your own property. An easement is defined as the right to use the property of another. It is impossible to have an easement on your own property.
But you've got to have utility easements to get service.
So if you want to say how wide you want the roadway to be, that's one thing, but there is not going to be an easement on this property. The easements are created if it was subdivided.
So how are you addressing your utilities to these cabins then?
And they would be run probably along the roadway.
Well, there'll be, the utility provider will require easements before they, and they don't just come run a wire through the woods. There'll be a 30-foot minimum
There
easement.
will be no
to it.
easements on this. I think the county attorney maybe could clarify. Do you understand the problem that we're having, Mr. Goddard? There can be no easements on this property because an easement.
Well,
who would
I own
be-
property that there's a utility easement through. TVA has an easement through my farm.
You're talking about, okay, so you're talking about allowing the utility.
I'm
company
telling you,
to
North
do
Georgia Electric or Georgia Power or EPB, either one, is not gonna come and start just running through the woods around this mile loop and hooking up cabin. They'll have to be designed, how they're gonna feed. That's what we're trying to say is that I don't think I think the planning commission was spot on because that there just need to be more information. Those are things that are gonna be, necessary to even understand how the project can come together. The utility providers, anybody talk to, who is the utility provider over there? The power provider, because in that area, we have North Georgia Electric, we have EPB out of Chattanooga, and we also have some Georgia Power. But so, there's just some unanswered questions that if there was a better packet kind of put together, because it is, here again, and this is one thing that really gets me, I'll just be very frank. You've mentioned several times it's a multi-million-dollar, well then I want to see some drawings. If it's a multi-million-dollar investment, then why would we not, on the front end, put together these types of drawings to show the utility easement? Show me where the runoff water is going to go, because I know the property's on the side of the hill. I played golf at High Point all my life, and I'm well familiar with all the property. But you know what I'm saying, so I don't think anybody's trying to stop it, but it's not as simple as just coming in and saying, we want 7 variances to go out here and build 7 cabins at the end of a pig trail. I think that would be irresponsible for us to allow that without having any more information than we do, especially if we're gonna be bringing in people from outside the area, possibly on the rental side, that would not know anything about where they're going or anything about it. They just come here. So we need to make sure that it is, like I said, accessible, safe, that the water, I don't know about as far as getting water in there and all. Of course, that would be all private. Like I said, that's all on him, but it's got to get from the roadway to his property. As far as if there's, I don't know what size water lines are there. So there's just a lot of questions that we just need to really understand, Mr. Ben, before we
Sure.
just grant the variance. I mean, that's my opinion. But
I'm really confused and a little bit frustrated because we've talked about, like, for instance, utilities. Well, the power company will either put utilities in or not. The county has no control. I don't think the county has control over that.
no, it's
And these
just,
cabins require power. So in any normal development, it's the duty of the private citizen to engage the private power company to put private power, put these privately operated and maintained power lines on the property. So, if you grant the variance and then the power company won't supply the power for some strange reason, then your problem's solved. I'm a little confused. I personally feel like we're getting a little far afield of the issue. I think the concerns are valid. I just I wasn't prepared to address them to this board. I mean, the county doesn't have power. So acquiring power is something that every single developer has to do for every single project, whether you're building a house or a subdivision. So,
I think you misunderstood I'm not trying to delve into that we have any bearing on their power or anything like that. As being involved in developments and things over the years, and I just know there's the procedure of how to properly put together a project of this size. And it's not to start at the top asking for variances. It would be to show us actually a pretty good layout of what they were trying to do, and it would probably, had that been presented, it could have probably maybe been a different turnout to start with. I don't think that even part of the packet that we have was presented at the planning commission meeting. The pictures of the houses and all, they weren't even presented. So now we've changed up what was presented, and you're wanting us to make a ruling on some more information that's been added since they made their. And that's what we want is some more information, but we need the information that's valid to make a decision. And that is, and like I said, I think we're on two different, I think we're
You
looking at it two
understand the
different ways.
engineering that you're requesting is, you're talking about a substantial investment. In a county that has said from the very beginning, we think it's permitted, and you say, oh, no, it's not, from the very beginning. So asking this developer to spend 60 grand on engineering drawings for this, when from all we've heard from the county up and through until tonight, that it's not happening. Even though I tell you right now, my serious contention is that it absolutely can.
Any other
I think
questions for Mr. Bradford?
No, sir, I'm done.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Bradford. Anyone else that'd like to speak on this request, either for or against? Yes, sir. Please come up, state your name.
My name is John Morehouse. I'm with the Planning Commission and that night, and I really applaud you for the information that you have provided tonight, because it is in stark contrast to what was given to us at the Planning Commission. And
I wasn't at the planning commission.
I know, I know.
I was.
I know and I understand that, and I just want you to know that I appreciate, you know, that, and Mr. Lyons, we felt for you, we really did. But when the young man was asked by a member, would there even be bathrooms in these cabins? And he said, well, I think so. So now you've gone from this to, you know, and so what was presented to us, in all fairness, I think, now if I was wrong, please correct me. You know, it's just that sometimes we see talk is cheap, and it's always, as you brought out, multi-million dollars, but we just don't want nobody to blow in and throw something up and put some pig trails up in the woods and leave the county stuck and the residents to bail it out. And that's all I wanted to say, was that there was, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John. Anyone else would like to speak on this issue? Yes, ma'am, please, come up, please. Just please state your name for our record, please.
Hi, my name is Jamie. I'm the Mr. Lyons realtor on the selling side, and I think I kind of see it on both ends. I kind of wish the buyer was here, but he wasn't, because he could clarify a lot of things. I think I was at the planning committee, and the packet you see before, I think Mr. Craig, after the meeting, I think 2 or 3 members of the board came up to him, kind of just gave him a little bit more advice, like, this is why we turned you down, because they were they had less information to start with, and so they're like, it would help if you had visuals, and so that's why you have more information today than you had on the, because he took to heart, and I took notes, and I told the buyer's realtor, hey, these are the things that they gave him as advice, would probably help for our meeting today. And because I represent Mr. Lyon, I've only seen the buyer at that meeting, because, you know, they want to keep the buyers and sellers separate. And I think what I get from the buyer's agent is they're not asking, like, this is what we're going to do. I think they're kind of new at this. This is like something they want to try. Same thing, I looked his company up, because for Mr. Lyon, I'm like, are these legitimate buyers? Looks like they do have like a marathon. The buyer, Mr. Craig, and his wife own a marathon company, which they set marathons, but when we got the offer, they're backed by a private silent partner for the money. So I think someone else, which his name wasn't on the contract, which is fine, because they showed us the financials. And I think the tone we get is, I think they're kind of new, at least Mr. Craig is new at this, and I think it helps if, like Mr. Bradford said, is if you guys give us feedback. And it's, real estate is kind of different, because it's like, there's a lot of dead ends, because I can only say something to their agent, and they come back, so there's a lot of touch and go, not like sitting here, let's talk in front of each other. So I think what in observance is, I think they need a little bit, if you're wanting more information, because just from the last meeting, they're like, okay, and then they provided that. But I think if you're wanting more, I don't see why, like you said, like what are your actual roads and how are you gonna run the utilities? Like, if you're asking for that, I think they'll be more than accommodating to give you those and go to the standards by that you guys would want it at. I don't think they're saying like, this is done and final. I think right now where we're at is Mr. Lyons trying to sell his property, but he's kind of stuck with this big link, because we originally, the offers I got, a lot of people came, Mr. Craig was a different, he wanted short-term rental. There were some people that wanted to do like family compounds, but 63 acres was just too big of a investment for them. They just felt like that was gonna be way too much work. Then they wanted to put in, multiple families came, but that 63 acres was a little bit too much. That's what I keep hearing. This is gonna be too much. And then the other people that wanted to put offers in were I wanna do a subdivision or have separate it into parcels and have separate. So, as a realtor, that's the type of people I think you're gonna kind of come in front of you for the 63 acres. And seems like for family dwelling, it's a little too much for them. So I've only gotten offers from investors, whether it be this one was a brand new one that I've never been approached by, but most of them was, how many houses can I build to resell? And then but like I said, Mr. Craig is not. I think if you're wanting more information or you put more restrictions on, like these have to be set, I think right now is they're just wanting to know, can I buy this property to do this? Because he's just trying to find a seller to sell it to someone. Unfortunately, I wish he got the front 9 and not the back 9. It would have been easier, but he has the back 9 to work with, and this is what we're facing with where the land is located. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else on this?
I don't have any more argument, but I talked to Mr. Lyon, if the board, I don't know if it's permissible to table it. If that's what you want to do is table and ask for more information, we're open to that if that's what you want, and more discussion. You may want to I just want to let you know that if that's what you want to do and it's permissible, we're not opposed to that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other comments?
Can I say something real fast as well, just real quick?
Yes, come on up.
So, speaking off of what Mr. Yon here was saying at the meeting prior that they were denied at, so here's a little packet, and I also talked to Scott Forrest about the requirements for life safety, emergency response and whatnot. I think the last page in there, he sent me an email back what they would require for that. But that was just I asked a lot of those questions about a habitable, if it's going to be a primitive cabin, that, or if it's going to be a habitable, with electricity, smoke alarm, smoke detectors, life safety stuff, egress windows and whatnot. So a lot of those questions did come from me. And then they did say that they're going to build, I guess they turned in that packet, they sent that email in describing what they wanted to do. But that's just showing the roadways, a letter from our fire marshal showing what he would require to get first responders in and out of that property. So.
Okay. Thank you for that.
John, just a quick question. How
Yes,
would you
sir.
describe the topography of this 63 acres?
Oh, well, it runs up the hill a little bit and lays flat kind of, I guess that would be on the north side, and then to the east right there. It runs up and down a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't really call it a ridge, but it's pretty hilly in there for a few spots. That was
Back 9 of the golf course.
yeah, on that,
Back 9 of the literal golf course.
is that on the north side of the property? That's the back 9 right there, correct?
Right.
So I guess it'd be towards the south, it'd be a little more hilly, right?
Seven sites are gonna be greens, where the
Yeah.
greens were.
Well, the biggest issue with the planning board was there was no plan, absolutely nothing. They're just spitballing, throwing cabins in. They didn't know if they're gonna be primitive. I asked the question if they're gonna be bathhouses, because there's a certain distance for a bathhouse between primitive cabins and whatnot. So we were just asking information. They really didn't know at the time. I think they had submitted some other stuff. So anytime you're, doing a habitable living dwelling unit, there's requirements as far as life safety with the building codes and whatnot. So that's why those questions were asked. And of course, the roadways to get in there that's the number one concern in any construction is life safety, ingress, egress. And also when you're having a heart attack, minutes mean everything. So to get first responders in there is extremely important, so.
May I ask a question? I mean, normally though, what would happen is like, you have the ability to say, you can build these because we'll allow it. And then, before each cabin is built, a permit would need to be pulled to build that cabin, even though the county may say you can do it. You'd have to get a permit, right?
Yes, sir.
And before a permit was granted to build that cabin, you guys would take all this into account. You'd drive up there and you'd make sure it was accessible, and you'd make sure that there was power access, and you wouldn't just grant a permit, right?
Well, I mean, and depending on the property and the development, of course, you have to have construction entrance. As you can see, that road goes to a private, where the pavement ends, it becomes a private drive. So you can't have a private drive off a private drive, so that's one of the issues as well. So there's just a few different things. And you said, in your own words, they're more than likely gonna take care of that road. Well, I mean, God forbid something happens to them and they're not able to continue this development, or they're no longer involved in this, you have to take that in consideration as well. And so that was just one of the things that was just kindly up in the air. It might be, maybe they're going to take care of it. I'm sure they're going to, but there's no guarantee they're going to. So that's just kind of one of the things. That's why there's pictures there showing that road and kind of the condition it's in and whatnot. So
I guess I was just pointing out, it's not like you guys could vote tonight, it's allowed, and then gangbusters, whatever. This is just, can they build them? And then they'd still have to come every single building, get a building permit, and meet all of y'all's requirements. So it's not, to the extent maybe I put some fear in y'all that this vote is like, yes, and then you're just off to the races, they can do whatever. Ben can stand up here and lie to us, and they can go do whatever. Each one is you gotta watch attorneys now, some of them will lie now, I know some of them. But each one would have its own building permit, and that would have to be approved as you go. So I mean, we're just asking, can we start, and are you gonna turn us down just because of the number? If the answer is no, then we still have to go through all the permitting and all that stuff. This is not a do or die. If you vote yes, now they do whatever. I mean, you guys still have oversight through the entire, to address all of Mr. Askey's very, very valid concerns.
Let's say a few things.
Yeah, if you would, come up, if you're gonna come up to the microphone.
My name's James Lyon. I'm represent the sellers here. It's in a trust, and I'm the trustee on that. I've lived in this county since I married my wife. She's a Gilly, so if you played the golf course, you might know her. I've lived there 36 years, and Cindy and I, we plan to live and die there. We're just selling the property. We're keeping our houses, 300, 304. It's unfortunate that Mr. Brown wasn't able to attend today. I got a text at 1 o'clock saying that he had a family emergency and that he wouldn't be able to attend. But I do know from talking to Mr. Brown, he's in the package. He stated, for instance, on the roads, he talks about the 10-foot wide gravel road, but he said the roadway is being constructed with acknowledgement of the standard requirements for gravel road construction in the state of Georgia. I know for a fact that he's talked to environmental, so that's where erosion control permitting and so forth is going to come in. I'm assuming, I don't know, I've not done that, but I know he's made that steps with the county. He's also inquired and started the process for a tourist accommodation permit. I mean, and if you look through the package, some of the things, some of the rules, every house will have an information package for the guests. And one thing you might notice, there's no smoking, no pets, no parties. I mean, this is going, and the cabins themselves, he describes as luxury cabins. The question the planning committee had about bathrooms, it was unfortunate there wasn't a good answer given, but he was getting, at that time, he had applied, and I think he'd already, environmentals already performed soil samples at each cabin site for septic systems. And so, yes, Mr. Brown is learning this process. He's willing to comply fully, whatever it takes to get this done. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda for public comments. Is there anyone that would like to come forward and speak on another topic? Yes, sir. Yes. Please state your name for the record. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Okay. I'm Jim Pope, and I'm a concerned citizen. And something happened that the last time I was here that was concerning to me. And that is, I think I saw the agriculture zoning be chipped away some. Now, I know the ones that were requesting that, they had a good argument. But I think the farmers should be supported. Now, the farmers makes their living a different way from the people in the residential areas. For example, they have to use fertilizer, and one common fertilizer is chicken litter. And if they can't make their land productive, chicken litter is one of the best I know of. I recently had a man that said he was up helping his uncle haul hay up in Whitfield County, and he was complaining about the land being so poor he couldn't grow good hay. I told him, well, what you need to do is get you some chicken litter and start putting on that place, and then you'll be producing good quality hay like Brian Hart does. He shook his head. No, can't do that. The neighbor complains. Well, another thing. Farmers, sometimes they're wooded areas, they need to burn them in a controlled burn. But if you got that area packed pretty tightly there, you may be getting complaints from the smoke. And this is the way the farmers are making their living differently from the residential area. When I was a youngster, we had a neighbor that had a hog parlor. When on certain days, we could smell the odor from that hog parlor. But did we ever think about making a complaint? No, because we were farmers and we recognize the odors from the farmers may be different. Also, spraying, that can produce a odor close by. And I was just wanting to encourage this board to really support the farmers out here. How much income does a farmer contribute to Walker County, Shannon?
I don't know the number. I do know that agricultural is the #1 industry in our county, but I cannot cite the number. I just don't have it to memory.
It's the #1 industry, and we should be protecting our #1 interests. Do y'all agree with that? All of you agree with that? Okay. Now, once you open the gate up, people starts coming in and you giving variances. What are you going to do the next time somebody comes in with a very similar situation from the one that the last time was here? I think it was 2 meetings ago. Are y'all going to keep giving these variances out? Mark, what do you think?
I think, I'm glad you asked that. I think it's, variances are based on the individual situations. And so I couldn't, to answer it any differently, Jim, would not be fair. As long as their variance request, we would look at it and try to be as fair as we can.
Yeah, but I'm saying almost identical. Almost identical, you still, would you, I assume you'd still give them a variance.
Well, that's an assumption, like I said, until we would, I wouldn't, I'm not gonna agree or disagree with you on it. I would say it would be specific to the situation.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Well, that is a good statement. I'm just trying to say almost identical, that's the point I'm wanting to make. We got to protect the farmers. They're the #1 industry in Walker County. So I hope this board protects them. My time is up.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Pope.
Anyone else that would like to speak tonight? Okay, we'll move forward on our agenda.
I think we've got one other, Jim.
Oh, I am so sorry. Yes, I am so sorry. I didn't see your hand up. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Please state your name for the record, if you would.
I'm Jennifer Testa, and this is my husband, Donald Testa. And we just wanted to come and introduce ourselves tonight and invite everyone to come to Rock Spring Resort to have a look around. We bought the old boys' home, and we have been renovating it for the last 2 years. Basically, we moved to Rock Spring during COVID, and our kids are, they go to Rock Spring Elementary School, and we have been working to make this a really wonderful place for people to come and be a part of Walker County. We are also working with the environmental group, and we've had a lot of support from Scott Forrest and from John in helping to get this very old building up to code, and also to make sure that we were able to install a sprinkler system and central fire alarm and all the other things involved in a big project that we didn't really know about until we undertook this one. I think we must have watched a little too much HGTV or something like that during COVID. But we just want to introduce ourselves and say, please come out, and we would love to show you around.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you all for coming and speaking tonight.
Yes, I do want to make one comment. I have not been to the property. I've only seen it from the road, but I will come and visit. But you have done such marvelous work on that property. It's absolutely beautiful from the road. So you've got that curb appeal look going on. So it looks really good.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, anyone else? Okay, we'll move forward now. Just a second. All the information from our 2 public hearings they give us copies of, so we'll get over here to where our next information is. Okay. Okay, so under our new business, we have an independent contractor agreement with the Walker County Development Authority for the sale of real property. This is a marketing agreement. Says this agreement is entered into between the Walker County, Georgia, a political subdivision of the state of Georgia County, and the Walker County Development Authority, known as the WCDA. The effective date of this agreement is the date of the last party's signature of this agreement. Whereas the county is the owner of property located at 122 Maple Street, Rossville, Georgia, tax map and parcel number 2007-006, upon which is located one or more buildings that were previously operated by Coates America property. And whereas since the prior to this date, the Coates American conveyed ownership of the property to the county, the property has been in an abandoned state. And whereas the county has no use for the property, and the county desires for the property to be used in a manner that the property has highest and best use. Whereas Walker County desires the assistance of the Walker County Development Authority in determining the highest and best use of the property. And whereas Walker County Development Authority has knowledge and is familiar with the property, and the Walker County Development Authority has experience in determining the highest and best use, value, and marketing of similar properties. And whereas the Development Authority agrees to assist the county in the evaluation and the marketing of the property. Now, therefore, in consideration of the mutual benefits set forth here within, the parties agree as follows. Number one, the Walker County Development Authority shall evaluate the property and prepare a proposed request for proposal or RFP regarding the property. The Walker County Development Authority shall submit the proposed RFP to the county for review and approval within 10 days of the effective date of this agreement. Walker County Development Authority shall not release the RFP to the public prior to the county's approval of the RFP. Number two, the Walker County Development Authority shall release the RFP to the public no later than 7 days after the county approves the RFP. Number three, the deadline for the public to respond to the RFP shall be the maximum of 45 days from the date of the RFPs made public. Number four, the Walker County Development Authority shall submit in written recommendation regarding the RFPs and copies of all the responses to the RFP to the county no later than 7 days after the deadline of the response to the RFP. The county, as its sole discretion, may accept, modify, or reject the recommendations of the Walker County Development Authority or any other responses to the RFP. Number six, in the final decision, the county involves the conveyance of the property to the third party, then the closing shall be scheduled within 10 days of the county's final decision. The conveyance shall be from the county to the Walker County Development Authority. The Walker County Development Authority shall immediately, therefore, convey the property to the third party. Walker County Development Authority shall immediately deliver the total amount of the sum proceeds to the county. Number seven, the Walker County Development Authority shall have no legal responsibilities for any claims related to the property, including but not limited to any environmental claims. This is to be signed by both the Walker County government and also presented and be signed by the approval of the Walker County Development Authority. Any discussion or question of the board? Any additional comments on this?
Now, just kind of where this came from is we were approached about the property. Private investors are wanting to buy it and invest into it. Me and Shannon sat down with the city and the one that approached the county. Great ideas and things, but the city wanted to be included, you know, as far as the best use, what they were looking for. So, man, Commissioner Askew was talking about it one day, and he said, hey, we can let the Development Authority market it for us and involve the RDDA, and that's a way that the city can have some input. The Development Authority can market it, so that's what we agreed to do.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
I'm excited.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve this marking agreement?
Motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Blakemore. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Stoltz. Any further discussion of the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the agreement is approved by this body. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Randall Dalton request for partial rezone from C1 Commercial to A1 Agriculture for property located at 10161 North Highway 27, Rock Springs, Georgia 30739. tax map and parcel number 0-325-026. This was also heard at the planning meeting back on June the 16th. Their recommendation was to approve as submitted for the, looks like 10.26 acres. That's any discussion further of the board.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hart to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion of the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, be approved as submitted. Okay, the next item is the James Lyons requests 7 variances for more than 6 on a private drive for property located at 0 Gilly Lane, Chickamauga, Georgia, 30707, tax map and parcel number 0-041-025. This was also heard, as we've discussed, back on June the 15th at the Planning Commission. At that time, based off the information they had, Planning Commission's recommendation to this body was to deny. Unless any further discussion of the board.
Well, Mr. Chairman, what we're asked to being looked at based on, and we had a lot of discussion tonight from Mr. Bradford and several people, and I appreciate everybody giving their input. Mark had some very good points. But what we're being asked to do is grant 7 variances. So we're being asked to allow 13 houses, maybe they're not houses, maybe they are, but there could be 13 families living in those houses on any given night. 13 houses on a road that, we all saw the picture of the road that had the holes in it. And I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great concept, but I don't think we as a board can, without more planning, with more better access to that property, allow that to be going in there.
But we as a board tonight could, and I'm just making a comment, put in the stipulations if we approve these variances that they had to keep that up, correct?
I don't know.
I mean, let me just interject a comment. I agree with Commissioner Hart, Commissioner Askew. I think it's a great concept, a great idea. I like the look of the cabins that are possibly gonna be built, and preserving the nature in that area. I like that, but I just do not feel comfortable with the safety issues of fire apparatus getting into that. That is a huge hiccup for me. And I would like more information on how this project is gonna move forward before I could give my approval on this. Thank you.
So one option I believe the board has, the county attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you do have the option to table this tonight for more information or more plans or information that could be requested as an option. So we do have here, actually I see it now on my paper, approved as submitted, approved with conditions, or tabled or denied.
So that would give 2 weeks, correct? If it were tabled, we would have to hear it. Is that correct?
It's actually 3 weeks, just because how the calendar falls.
Okay.
It would be, the next meeting is July the 13th, I believe is the correct date.
And a question too, Council. So if it takes longer for them to gather their information, could they not notify us that and then put them on the agenda when they got the information together? Or, in other words, I'm just thinking that 2 weeks may be not quite enough time to put the stuff, and so if we're gonna table it and give them an opportunity, which I think we should give the owner, the potential client an opportunity, and let's back up and reboot and see where we can go from there, and see what things look like. I just wanna make sure that we're not gonna confine them to a short amount of time. It's not gonna give them time to do it.
5 weeks then? I think my opinion, the best thing to do would be table it, have the potential owner come to the next meeting. Tell him that if we're gonna approve it, we're gonna approve it contingent on the fire apparatus and all that. If he agrees to it, approve it, is nobody will spend $60,000 with us, still might not approve it. So approve it. We have a good man back here, John Pursley, that is gonna watch out for the county and make them do what we put in that. So I say, get the owner here at the next meeting, tell him what we want, and him say yes or no. If he says no, then we don't pass it. If he says yes, we approve it.
So there really are two different questions that were asked. The first question was, can this board agree to continue it beyond the next meeting? And I think there may be a technical no, but I think the spirit of the law is that if both parties were to agree, mutually agree on the reset, that we could do that. Now, the second question was, Mr. Blakemore raised a question. His comment was, well, let's just table it to the next meeting, have the owner show up. Both of those are legally permissible. They're different. So I hope I've answered the question from a legal perspective. You can either, by mutual agreement, continue it beyond the next meeting, or you can have the proposed purchaser show up at the next meeting to do that.
I support that, Robert.
I would like to table it to the next meeting, ask the potential owner to come, and
I don't have a problem with that. I think it's a good idea. I would ask, and like you said, Robert, nobody needs to go spend $60,000 if it's not gonna be able to work, but I would ask in this 2-week time frame that we have to try to get a little better understanding of some of those general questions that were asked as far as we're gonna have bathrooms, bathhouses, or we're talking about putting power. Just some of that general stuff, that I'm gonna need to hear those answers.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And for me, again, it's still the county road, the private drive car that's there. And if we do like the ideas we hear, we've still got, in this picture you saw, potholes and mud holes to drive through to get to these $300,000 homes.
Ryan, can I add something to this?
Sure.
There is possible compromise here. If the buyer brings Gilly Lane up to county specs,
Okay.
at least to the co-op house,
Okay,
or to the entrance to this property,
okay,
if they bring that up to county specification, we take that over, it becomes county road to this property, and then they start their private drive off of that, and then there's no more issue.
They'd only be required variance for 2 if they wanted to have 8, but they would be allowed 6.
well, that's good, Carl.
That's a very feasible, very
Okay,
good.
so there may be some other options to consider if they come back, and as our attorney mentioned a while ago, due to the way the calendar falls, we meet the second and fourth Thursday of every month. So this being that long time, where we actually would not be back for 3 weeks, which I looked on my phone there, that is the 13th of July would be that second Thursday of July. So if I'm hearing correctly, we have a motion from Mr. Blakemore to table this to the next meeting to gain further information and give the buyer more time to research options possibly. So do we have a second?
Absolutely, yes.
Because we have a second from Mr. Hart for that motion for further discussion.
Yes, sir. Further, one quick question for Mr. Bowers. So Carlin, you were referring to the county possibly taking over another section of that, correct?
One of the contingencies here, if in this, have their buyer bring the private portion of Gilly Lane up to county road specs, have it, paved and everything. Wouldn't be near as much as building a whole new road.
Okay.
But they could bring it up to county specifications. I think we're talking about 400, at the very most 600 feet. And then we extend the county portion of Gilly Lane to that.
How far would that be potentially?
About 600 feet, whatever they bring up. I need to go out and measure that part. But I don't think, it's not much more than 600.
No, I mean, it turned, I think this gentleman owns that property as well, that gave him the easement to get in there, so somewhere in there, about 400 feet to that property, but I don't know where it turned into the easement for his property, for his private drive.
So that's 400 feet that we would Now maybe.
About 465 feet from the paved road to the private drive, about 465.
Can you also maybe, when this comes back up, could you give us an idea of the cost of that?
Right now, just shooting from the hip, I'd say 65, 70,000. The base is already there, and most of the width is. But, I mean, there needs to be a little bit of work there to be done, as far as widening things out. But I believe the private portion is just about as wide as the county portion. With just the extended Gilly Lane, say 465 feet.
Roughly, it would take a couple of feet.
So that'd be some options that they could look at and work with the planning office and our public works department on as well during this 3-week time period. Okay, so we do have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion of the board to the motion to table this until the proposals can come back to this meeting in our next meeting? Okay. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion would be tabled till next meeting.
Gentlemen, I've been married more than 20 years, and there's one thing I've learned, maybe is a whole lot better than no.
Very good, counsel.
All right, I know we've been here a long time tonight, and I don't want to hold y'all too late, but we do have our department statistics in your packet for everyone to look at. There is a lot of activity going on in our community. I just will point out just a couple of things here real quick, that we did have 39 new building permits for single-family home constructions in May, and our building inspections department did 462 inspections. So a lot of data there, good information, and hats off to everyone involved in the growth of our county. We'll move right into our commissioner comments. We'll start with District 1 Commissioner, Mr. Blakemore.
Just appreciate everybody coming out and getting involved. It helps us better do our job. Appreciate all the county workers and employees and emergency services. Mark?
Mr. Askew?
Hard act to follow, guys. Like I said, keeping us abreast of your ideas, your thoughts, that helps us do a better job here. We appreciate the concern and the ideas that y'all bring to us. Definitely appreciate our employees, the job that they do day in and day out through this inclement weather we've been having. And just everybody be safe and enjoy their summer.
Mr. Hart?
Well, we got a lot going on. Mark missed the down home days in Chickamauga.
Oh,
see, I'm looking out for Chickamauga here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Brian Hart.
It's next Saturday.
Yes.
From 12 till dark.
Right.
Yeah, and also in Lafayette next Friday is a Freedom Festival up at the Ross Avenue complex. So get out and see that at the 4th of July. Be safe. We had plenty of rain, so those should burn down maybe. And last thing, the ribbon cutting is at the African American Museum, which is the old Long John Silver's building, this Thursday at 3 o'clock. Not this Thursday, a week from today at 3 o'clock. So good event. Those people have done a lot of work there. A lot of people from the county have worked there. I think Ricky Austin even worked there some, so it's got to be good if Ricky worked there.
He was probably
Thank you,
there.
sir. Appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Want to thank all of our employees for their hard work, their dedication, keep our county rolling forward. I just appreciate our sheriff's department and our EMS and fire department for keeping us safe, and appreciate our board members who sit on our boards. Mr. Morehouse, you're in that department, so appreciate that. Thank everyone, and hope everyone enjoys a nice weekend.
Very good. Okay, next time on our agenda, we do have a need for a quick executive session. So I'd like to make the motion that we go into executive session to discuss real estate and also a personnel.
Quick, yes.
Quick. So that's the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Stoltz. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we stand adjourned for executive session, and then we will return. Okay, it is still June the 22nd, 2023. I'm going to call us back to order. It is 8:51 p.m. The board does have one action item here on a resolution that I'm going to read. This is Resolution R-024-23. It's a resolution of the Walker County Board of Commissioners to authorize the chairman to execute all documents and take all further action necessary to purchase the real property located at 311 South Main Street, Lafayette, Georgia, whereas the real property and building thereon located at 311 South Main Street, Lafayette, Georgia, tax map and parcel number 1039-071, property is for sale. And whereas Walker County would benefit from the acquisition and use of the property due to the geographical location and the size of the building. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Walker County does hereby authorize, 1, the purchase of the property for a sales price not to exceed $329,840 plus associated closing costs, and 2, the commission chairman to execute all documents and take all further actions necessary to purchase the property. So resolved and adopted the 22nd day of June 2023. So as chairman, I'd like to make the motion that we authorize this resolution R24-23 to make this property purchase. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Hart to the motion to purchase the property. Further discussion of the board. Hearing none, all in favor of this resolution say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes. We have no other action items to come before the board at this time, so we'll move for a motion to adjourn and close out our meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion by Commissioner Hart. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Stoltz. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.